He first saw her outside the bookstore on Maple Street, where the red brick sidewalk buckled under the weight of age and tree roots. She was standing with her back to the door, eyes hidden behind large sunglasses, waiting perhaps for a cab, perhaps for a moment of courage, while the spring wind caught her coat and turned it slightly outward, revealing a silk scarf the color of dusk. Julian wasn't the type to notice details like that. He wasn't a poet, or someone particularly given to noticing scarves, but she stood there like she wasn't waiting for anyone at all. Just being. Not scrolling through her phone, not pretending to read a menu, not posing. That's what struck him. She was just there, perfectly out of place, like she had wandered out of a French film and gotten stuck in a college town where everyone was 19 and loud and trying too hard. He walked past her, then past the window, then turned back again. On impulse, maybe. Or instinct. Inside, the bookstore was small, narrow, dusty in a way that smelled of effort and old opinions. The kind of place you come to for the creased poetry books in the back, not the seasonal bestsellers. When she stepped inside 10 minutes later, he had already pretended to be reading something by Borges and was standing near the door like he wasn't waiting for her. She didn't notice him at first. She went straight for the travel section, picked up a book on Italy, then quickly put it back. Then she lingered over a stack of memoirs but didn't pick any up. Julian watched her do this with the slow-burn curiosity of someone studying the tides. Her hands were elegant but worn, no manicure, a thin silver band on one finger, not the ring finger. Her coat was expensive but old. Her eyes, when she took the sunglasses off, were steel gray and tired in a way that made you want to ask her everything and nothing at once. He moved beside her, said something he didn't plan, looking for an escape or just pretending? She turned her head slightly, not startled, but annoyed. Then something softened. Maybe both, she said. And that was it. That was the beginning, if you needed a moment to point to. There had been no flirtation, no clever comment or magnetic pull. Just two people occupying the same breath for one line too long. He saw her again 3 days later. She was at the same bookstore, again, but this time she lingered at the cafe counter, stirring cream into her coffee without drinking it. He approached with a borrowed confidence that felt like someone else's. Still pretending? He asked. She actually smiled then. A half smile, yes, but it reached her eyes. She looked him over with a practiced gaze that said she'd done this before, measured men, understood the angles of desire, the clumsy beginnings. She was beautiful, but not the way girls on campus were beautiful. Not curated. Not filtered. She had laugh lines, faint but there. A neck that didn't pretend to be 20. And a gravity about her that made you shut up or speak carefully. I've been divorced 2 years, she said, apropos of nothing. Don't know why I'm telling you that. Julian blinked. Because I asked if you were pretending? Because I'm tired of pretending, she said, sipping the coffee finally. And because sometimes you say things to strangers you'd never admit to your friends. He laughed gently. So I'm a stranger? She looked at him again, really looked. And for a second, he saw the woman she might have been 10 years ago, when she still wore hope like perfume. That glimpse disappeared almost instantly, but it left a mark. You're 22, she said, not asking. 23. Soon. Still a stranger. He wanted to ask her name, but something told him not to. It would break the spell. Instead, he said, you look like someone who knows how to disappear. She considered that. I used to. But not anymore. That was the moment. The climax of the act, the thing you could circle in red and say, there. Because when she smiled, really smiled, it was hesitant and clumsy, like someone relearning a language they used to dream in. He had done nothing extraordinary, made no bold declarations, but that smile was not ordinary. It wasn't flirtation. It was a thank you. A warning. A start. He didn't ask for her number. She didn't offer. But when they walked out, 10 minutes apart, they both looked back. As if the world had tilted, slightly. As if something inevitable had already begun. Julian had always liked to think of himself as someone who drifted between circles. In college, that meant he could drink whiskey with the political science majors on Thursdays, sit in on poetry readings at the library Fridays, then crash a frat party out of curiosity Saturday night. He wore old boots, listened to Nick Cave, and never used the word girlfriend unless someone made him. That's how he liked it, shallow roots, soft landings. But after he saw her again, and this time, he asked for her name, things stopped being shallow. Her name was Elise. She said it like a confession, not a greeting. There was a gravity to it, like it had weight she didn't want to carry anymore. They had coffee in the back of the bookstore, behind a crooked wooden divider that barely shielded them from the bored barista's gaze. Elise wore the same scarf, and Julian kept staring at her hands when she spoke. They were elegant but restless, always fidgeting with the sleeve of her coat, always on the verge of picking something up or putting something down. "What do you do?" he asked, halfway through his cold espresso. "I used to work in marketing. Corporate branding. Tech startups. Now I manage a boutique property firm out near Southwood." She paused, then added, "I live alone." He didn't ask if she had kids. He didn't ask who left whom. Instead, he told her about growing up in Cedar Hill, about his mother who was a nurse and his father who once ran a grocery store that nobody goes to anymore. He told her about how he transferred universities 3 times, not out of failure, but out of the quiet panic that he was missing something he couldn't name. "So now you study philosophy and bartend at night," she said, tilting her head. "Still searching?" "Still pretending," he said, echoing her. They started meeting once a week. Then twice. Always in hidden places, coffee shops with fogged windows, bookstores after dark, or the rare Sunday walk in the botanical gardens before the crowds arrived. It was never a date, not officially. Never a question of what are we? Only the steady hum of 2 lives overlapping in the quiet places no one noticed. But people notice. It began with whispers, campus friends seeing Julian exit a cab near Southwood, an area no 20-something could afford without generational wealth or criminal connections. Then came the comments. Someone in his ethics seminar asked him how he liked older women with a grin that wasn't a joke. At the bar where he worked, a tenured professor winked and said, "So, Elise Harrow. Didn't know you had it in you." The blood drained from Julian's face. "How do you know her?" "She used to host fundraising dinners for the university. Years ago. Let's just say she's memorable." That night, Julian told Elise about it. She was silent for a long time, sitting at her kitchen table in a house that smelled like cedar and rain. Finally, she said, "They always remember women who stop playing the part. Who age on their own terms. It terrifies people." He touched her hand across the table. She didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back either. "What are we doing?" she asked softly. "I don't know," he said. "But I don't want it to stop." Elise looked at him with something close to fear. "I'm not some secret fantasy, Julian. This isn't cute. It won't stay harmless. I've had to build a whole life around keeping certain lines from blurring." "Then don't blur them," he said. "Just meet me here. One step at a time." For a while, that worked. They got careful. No texts. No social media. A shared Google Doc with poems in quotes passed off as writing exercises. Code names. Jokes. She called him Sparrow, and he called her October. Then came the phone call. Julian was at work, refilling ice behind the bar, when his manager passed him the landline, an old clunky relic they only used when credit card systems crashed. "It's for you. Some guy." Julian answered, heart already pacing. A voice said, flatly, "You should be careful who you're seen with in Southwood. People talk. People listen. Click. No number. No name. Just static where certainty used to live." He stood there a long time, holding the phone like it might bite him. That night, he told Elise. She didn't seem surprised. She didn't ask who it was. She just said, "I told you. It doesn't stay harmless." "But who?" "Could be my ex-husband.
Could be someone from the board. Could be someone from your campus, even.
She stood and walked to the window, wrapped her arms around herself like the cold was coming from inside. You still want this? She asked. He walked up behind her. His answer was simple. Yes. She turned, eyes unreadable. Then we need rules. And so, they made them. No sudden visits. No more bookstore meets. No walking side by side in daylight. And if either one of them said stop, it meant goodbye. No arguing. They agreed to it. Silently. And still, they stayed. Because the fire had already caught. And neither of them had any water left to throw on it. Summer collapsed into itself. Days stretched long and gold, the kind of heat that slowed time and made people nostalgic for things that never happened. Elise hated summer. She said it made people dishonest. Too many open windows, too much pretending everything's fine because the sun is out. Julian, on the other hand, was born in late July and still clung to the illusion that heat could heal what time hadn't. They began meeting mostly at night. Her place in Southwood, always after 10 p.m., always quiet, always with the blinds drawn. Or sometimes in the car behind his apartment, parked under the only tree on the block that hadn't died yet. They spoke in the hush of midnight, when the world thinned out and only the raw things survived. Their conversations turned inward. Less about what they did that day, more about who they used to be. Julian told her about his father's stroke and how watching him fade in pieces made him resent responsibility. Elise confessed that she used to dream of being an architect but gave it up because people like her mother didn't believe in women building things. He played her music he wrote in high school, awkward and unfinished. She showed him sketches she never framed, of bridges and rooftops in quiet parks with benches that waited for someone who never showed. I think I'm alive again, she whispered once, lying beside him on the rug, candles flickering, rain drumming the windows. Is that dangerous? Yes, he said, without hesitation. Completely. The truth was, she made him want to stand still. She made him want to stop pretending that drifting was freedom. He saw the shadows under her eyes and felt, for the first time in his life, the brutal holiness of being needed. Not wanted, needed. She didn't try to fix him. She didn't even ask him to stay. But when she exhaled and the room held its breath, he knew she was letting him in. And that was everything. They had a rhythm now. Thursdays were theirs. Sunday mornings sometimes too. She began texting him with an old phone she said she bought for emergencies, and her messages were short, deliberate. Window unlocked. Pasta in the fridge. Come if you can. Don't if you can't. He kept every one of them. But the walls were closing in. It was a Thursday night in late August when the air felt too still and the moon was too full. Julian had left her house after midnight, walking through the narrow alley that led to the side gate. Elise always told him not to use the front door. Her neighborhood didn't take kindly to strangers on foot, especially young ones wearing thrifted jackets and backpack straps too tight. As he turned the corner, someone coughed. He froze. There, standing just outside the fence, was a woman walking her dog. Middle-aged. Blonde. Sharp posture, the kind that comes from too many yoga classes and too many wine-soaked evenings of concerned conversation. She looked at him. Looked at the gate. Looked at the house behind him. Julian offered a half-smile, like this was all normal. The woman said nothing. She just tugged the leash slightly and kept walking. But her eyes said everything. The next day, Elise was silent. He texted. Waited. Nothing. That night, he found her already sitting on the couch when he entered. Lights off. Music off. No wine. I know who she is, Elise said flatly. Margot Salton. She runs 3 neighborhood boards and volunteers at the museum twice a week. She once had a nervous breakdown because someone planted the wrong species of hydrangea on the South Median. She saw me. Elise nodded. She hasn't said anything yet, but she will. She always does. And when she does, it won't be a whisper.
Julian sat beside her, but she didn't lean into him. What happens now?
Elise looked at him like he was a question she had answered too many times and was tired of getting wrong.
I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything.
He touched her wrist lightly, felt her pulse tapping like Morse code.
I don't want to go underground, he said. We already are. I know. I don't want to be something you hide. She finally turned to face him. Then what are you willing to lose? He didn't answer. Because that was the thing.
They were already losing pieces of themselves in order to keep the other.
Nights stolen from real sleep. Conversations half held. Glances cut short. The quiet had started to burn.
But neither of them let go.
Instead, that night, they made love like fugitives. Desperate. Slow. Reverent. Every breath a denial of the world outside.
And when they fell asleep tangled together, it was the first time Elise didn't wake before him.
Outside, the wind picked up.
And somewhere nearby, the truth was getting closer. It started with a message slipped into her mailbox.
A white envelope. No return address.
One line typed in sharp, inkjet black across the center of the page.
Your secrets don't suit the neighborhood. Elise didn't tell Julian right away.
She spent 2 days walking on glass, answering calls with clipped words, canceling meetings at the firm, avoiding even her closest friend, Nora, the one person who had stayed after the divorce, after the board fallout, after Elise had made the quiet choice to age outside of expectation.
But secrets don't rot alone. They pull everything down with them. It was Nora who found out next. Not because Elise told her.
But because she came by unannounced with wine and sarcasm, as usual, and found Julian's jacket on the couch.
She held it up like evidence. You've got a boy in the house?
Elise froze.
Didn't answer. Didn't lie.
Nora stepped back, squinted at her friend like she was seeing a stranger.
Wait. No.
That's not Elise. Tell me this is someone over 30.
Still silence. You're serious. He's not a child, Nora. He's what, 25? 22? Jesus. 23. Nora sat down hard, wine bottle thudding on the table. You're one of those women now. What women?
The ones we used to roll our eyes at. The ones who swore they weren't looking for youth but always managed to find it anyway.
I didn't go looking. But you didn't stop it either.
Elise's voice sharpened.
You think I asked for this? That I wanted to fall into something that doesn't make sense, that keeps me up at night wondering how it ends?
No, Nora said softly.
I think you're lonely. And he made you feel like that means something again. Elise didn't cry. She just looked away and whispered, it did. The next few days moved like a countdown. Campus rumors flared up.
Some student named Carla, suspiciously plugged in for someone in an environmental science program, claimed she saw Julian with some older woman in Southwood and posted a vague rant about power dynamics on a campus confessions thread.
That was all it took.
At the bar, Julian noticed the way his co-workers paused when he walked in. At school, his advisor asked him if he'd gotten involved with any mentors in a tone that disguised nothing. In class, someone made a joke about mommy issues and laughed too hard. He told Elise they needed to get out.
Just for a weekend. Drive up the coast. Disappear for a few days. She said yes. But they never made it. Because on a Saturday night in early September, they ended up at a gala.
It was Elise's world.
Her mistake.
A last-minute invitation from a colleague at the firm who assumed she'd be bringing a +1, and Elise, tired of hiding, said yes before thinking.
You don't have to come, she told Julian. I want to.
He wore a second-hand black suit that didn't quite fit and a tie he hadn't used since graduation. She wore dark blue, understated, classic, her hair pulled back like armor. They arrived separately. Inside, the ballroom glittered with old money. Chandeliers, velvet, the sound of a string quartet weaving through conversations like perfume.
Elise's name turned heads. Julian's presence cracked the room open.
At first, no one said anything.
Just tight smiles. Just glances. Just whispers like the beginning of a storm.
Then, by the dessert course, it happened. Margot Sultan stood near the center of the floor in a pearl dress that sparkled like smugness. She held a glass of champagne, raised it halfway, and said, just loud enough, "Well, look who brought her scholarship project."
Everything went still. Julian turned toward the voice. Elise didn't. People turned to watch. Someone stifled a laugh. A man near the piano muttered, "Isn't that the boy from?" Julian stepped forward.
But Elise reached out, just lightly, fingertips to wrist.
She stepped past him. All eyes on her.
She walked up to Margot, calm and slow, and in a voice clear enough to cut the music, said,
"He's not a project. He's not a secret.
And he's not yours to dissect."
Margot blinked. "So it's true?" "Yes," Elise said. "And it's none of your business." The air in the room snapped. Somewhere, a glass clinked against marble. Someone exhaled sharply.
The room had become a stage and neither of them had lines left.
Julian stepped beside her. Didn't say anything. Just stood there. Together.
And in that moment, under the chandelier light, with strangers watching like judges, they let themselves be seen.
Not as a scandal. Not as a mistake.
But as two people who dared to cross a line that wasn't supposed to exist. When they left, the silence followed them.
No one stopped them. But nothing was the same. Not anymore. The fallout wasn't sudden. It came in fragments.
The week after the gala, Elise was called into a closed-door meeting at her firm.
"Optics," they said.
"We support your privacy, of course, but this community is small.
People talk. Investors have concerns."
They offered her a graceful exit.
A 3-month severance, a well-worded press release about her transition into independent consulting. She took it. No fight. No tears.
Just the quiet knowledge that they'd never seen her as irreplaceable. Just capable, and only until she made them uncomfortable.
Julian's life cracked around the edges, too. His advisor dropped subtle hints about reputation. "We all have personal lives," she said, "but yours is bleeding into academic perception.
I'd hate to see your thesis overshadowed by gossip." At the bar, someone scrawled "cradle robber" in Sharpie on the bathroom mirror.
He laughed when he saw it. Then went outside and threw up in the alley.
They stopped seeing each other for a week.
Not because they ended things.
But because nothing felt safe. Then one night, he showed up at her door again.
No warning.
She opened it in sweatpants, holding a cup of tea like a shield.
"I didn't come to fix anything," he said. "I just wanted to see you."
She stepped aside. They sat on the couch in silence.
No candles. No background music.
Just the soft hum of appliances and the weight of everything they hadn't said.
She finally broke it. "We can't keep living inside a war." "I know.
You're too young for this."
"I'm old enough to know I want you." "That's not the same."
He looked at her then, really looked at the lines deepening around her eyes, the exhaustion curling around her posture, the way she held herself like someone waiting for the next blow. "You told me once I made you feel alive again," he said.
"But you never told me if that's what you wanted."
She turned toward him slowly, lips parted to speak, but no sound came out. And when she did speak, it was barely audible.
"I didn't think I'd get to feel that again. I thought it was gone. I thought I was gone. And now? I don't know.
Now it's like I've borrowed time from a version of myself I buried years ago." He reached for her hand.
"Then maybe we just pay it back one day at a time."
She smiled, but it wasn't relief. It was grief wrapped in gratitude.
They didn't know what to call what they had anymore. Love felt too heavy. Affair too cheap. They were somewhere in between defiance and surrender. That weekend, Elise asked Julian to come with her to her niece's wedding. Out of town. Outdoors. Safe, in theory. But family sees things strangers miss.
It was in a coastal garden framed by cliffs and sea wind.
He wore the same black suit.
She wore green this time, with her hair loose for once.
The ceremony was beautiful, until the reception.
Her sister spotted them talking too closely under a canopy of lights, saw the way Elise's hand lingered too long on Julian's arm, the way his eyes followed her across the room. Later, at a white-draped table near the dance floor, Elise's sister cornered her.
"Who is he?" Elise hesitated. The music swelled. Guests swayed.
Champagne fizzed.
She answered with no drama. "Just truth. He's someone I didn't expect. You realize how this looks." I stopped caring how it looks.
"But he's barely older than her," her sister said, gesturing toward the bride.
"I know. Is this a phase?" "No." "Is it love?" Elise didn't answer. Because the truth was, it might have been. Or not. Or something else entirely. Something harder to name. The last dance came.
Couples circled slowly on the stone floor, warm lights overhead.
Julian walked toward her, hand outstretched. They danced.
For the first time in public. For the first time without shadows.
People watched. Of course they did. Let them, Elise thought.
When the song ended, she kissed him.
Lightly. On the cheek.
"I don't know where this goes," she whispered. Julian touched her waist, just for a second longer.
"We don't have to know."
They left the wedding before midnight.
Back in the car, Julian asked, "Do you think we'll still be doing this in 5 years?" She laughed, softly. "Doing what?" "Hiding. Explaining. Justifying."
She thought for a long moment, staring at the highway unfolding in headlights.
Then she said, "Maybe not. Maybe we'll be something else. Or nothing." Julian nodded. "Then what do we do now?" She glanced at him. Smiled. "You tell me."
The road stretched ahead.
Open. Empty. Honest.
And somewhere in the silence that followed, a question remained. One neither of them dared to ask out loud.
Would they still choose each other? If time ever gave them the chance to choose again?